Welcome to another episode of Track It. This is the last episode in the Turbo Cup series and quite a lot to go over in this one. Everything from getting the engine dressed up and ready to go in the car all the way up to mapping and doing my first track day in it. So, because there's quite a lot to cover, let's jump straight in. The engine is now ready to go back in the cup, and as you can see, everything is bolted onto it, so the wiring loom is on and the coolant pipes as well. I've got the spider on the gearbox and the lower washer that goes on the mount. I'm going to put the battery tray onto this once it's actually in the car, otherwise we'll scratch up the turret like we did on Mark's car. So in here we've got the gearbox on now, which has got the RTS clutch in it, light and flywheel, and this has got the diff. Then the turbo's on the back with the first part of the downpipe. We'll put the second part of the downpipe on when it's in the car. Since I put the turbo on, I've changed the nut on the turbo to just a locking nut, but with a 13mm head, so that the locking tab goes over that nut a little bit better than it did with the K-nut and locking washers. So it's pretty tight to get this in. The gearbox end slides in first because there's a little ridge in the chassis rail, so we'll get a couple of cloths over here and then slot it in, and then the whole thing's done. let's fire it up. It's at this point in the editing that I realise I pretty much stopped filming anything to do with the car beyond this point, and there is good reason for that. Originally I intended to build this car in 6 weeks, and I put 2 weeks contingency on top of that, so I'd used all of that 2 weeks at this point, and that's because I ended up doing just a little bit more restoration work on the car than I had originally intended to do, but it fitted the theme of the kind of OCD level build that I was going for, so it had to be done. That did, however, mean that I was pretty tight for time though, so at the time of filming the last clip, that was the Sunday before mapping, and there was quite a lot going wrong at that point. I was pretty tired of the build. I spent about 250-300 hours on it in the past 6 and 8 weeks, and that was just a bit too much. So the fact that it was going wrong meant that I just wanted rid of it. So I sent it up to Alex at AW Motorworks, and he sorted out loads of things for me, so I'm very grateful that he could fit me in at such short notice. After he'd sorted out the MOT and the DCAT and the ABS sensor and all of the leaks, I took the car to Engine Dynamics and managed to get 242 bhp and 220 foot-pounds of torque. I was also very pleased that the engine didn't blow up, because after building it myself I was a little bit nervous of something going wrong, even though I'd had the expert oversight. I did a couple of tinkering bits after bringing the engine back. I actually changed a couple of the rod bearings, so I was still a little bit nervous on mapping day. Car back then for a week, did a couple of bits to get it ready for Snetterton, which was the Shakedown, and the car was really good. That's also where we'll end this film, is by having a few clips of Snetterton, and you'll see that whilst it performed well most of the day, at the end of it there was a couple of little problems that I'm really pleased I found, but it's off being repaired at the moment. You may be wondering though why the timescale for this build was so tight, and that's because I was meant to be at the Nürburgring this weekend doing a track day, and I was also going to be there for Car Freitag. That has of course not happened for pretty obvious reasons, but it meant when I was building it I wanted to have sufficient time between doing the Snetterton track day and going to Germany. But because that's not happening and the car is now off, still being repaired at a pretty leisurely pace, which is nice, but in the future when I'm able to leave the house and leave the garage again, I will of course be filming more track day videos. That's the end of this series then. I want to say a massive thanks to Martin, who you can see on the right hand side waiting for the engine to blow up as we start it, but without him I would have been pretty much gone mental in this garage. I'd spent far too much time in here, and it was really good to have the company, and also his assistants doing a huge amount of the mechanical work, a lot of cleaning and painting and talking things up, and just generally making this a really good build that I enjoyed doing. I filmed these videos so I can look back on them in the future, because this is a build that I probably won't be doing again, or a build of this scale anyway. So I hope they've been informative for anyone watching them, and I hope you enjoyed them. Okay, that's it then. So thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you in another episode in the near future. This is the testing day at Snetterton, and the last time we were at Snet it was raining, and today is absolutely no different. It is currently a storm, so 45-mile-an-hour winds and really treacherous conditions. So hopefully the car will be okay. Everything's in order. It's done about 200 miles since mapping now, and everything has been working really well. Made a few tweaks to it last week, just to the exhaust to make sure it doesn't knock, and so we should be good. I was out for the last session of the day and heard a bit of a noise you thought, oh, it's not making boost quite as well. And a couple of things. So firstly, this has melted. This is the clip for the washer hose, and I found the washer hose kind of dangling on the exhaust. Then this conduit has also melted. You can maybe just about see that. The worst one is that the exhaust gasket has actually blown out, and you can probably see a gap between the turbo and the exhaust manifold where that gasket has blown out. This was a really thick copper gasket, so obviously not good, and now not very accessible. But unfortunately, loads of heat has flown up as a result of that while I've been going flat out, and it has completely cooked everything around it. So the oil feed on the turbo, the PVC outer on that has started to burn up. So I'm going to have to drive home very slowly and carefully.